Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Ilona Phillips. She's an entrepreneur, a psychotherapy group practice founder, and eating or disorder specialist. Welcome to the show, Ilona.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here. Yes.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure a lot of people, not just in India, but across the globe, will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about eating disorders, body image issues, and mental health. So I want to understand first from you, Ilona, you know about these things. So I want to understand, what is an eating disorder? Some people eat less, some people eat more. What's the problem with eating? Many people are foodie. So help us understand what is a right kind of eating, what is when it becomes an eating disorder.
Boy, that's such a big question that we could probably spend hours on. In the mental health field, we always say if it causes any kind of distress, it's probably going to be clinical, right? So there's such a range of eating disorders, of course, from the more restrictive, anorexia nervosa, ARFID, restrictive disorder, all the way to bulimia and binge eating disorder. And I think a telltale sign can be that if you're thinking about food or body image for a lot of your day, there's something going on. And I know that we are inundated with diet culture, and there's always a new fad diet, and eat this, don't eat that. So if there's, any anxiety around this and really close monitoring, certainly if it becomes compulsive, like we have to work it off, right? If I ate, I must go to the gym. Those would be some telltale signs. Yeah.
Right, Ilona. First, to understand, eating disorder, suppose in an adult, they have that understanding of what they are eating, what they are not eating. What about children? They want to eat a lot of things. They want to try out a lot of things. How should parents look at their part of eating? Many a time, children, teenagers, they are out of the house so much of time. How do I know? What do I tell them? What to eat, what not to eat? Or should we go by just old advice that one has heard of?
Yeah, so by the time they are teenagers, hopefully we have instilled some good values and sort of very positive relationship with food and body image, although that's difficult. I will tell you that generally dividing things into good, bad dichotomy creates problems. And we could actually, if we don't monitor our own anxiety as parents, it can really lead to sort of the forbidden fruit cycle, as I call it, right? Because if we really think about some foods as bad, we're going to instill fear. And if children don't have access to it, they might actually want more of that. And it's funny because in the US, of course, we have Halloween coming up, and this idea of a Halloween candy is coming up a lot. And for a lot of folks, that's anxiety provoking. But, we are born with the ability, right? Babies don't overeat or undereat. Like they know when they're full, when they're hungry. Like we are born with this, right? But somewhere along the way, thanks to diet culture, diets, this inner knowing gets distorted, right? And so some folks do lose hunger satiety cues, right? They don't know when they're hungry, when they're full, unless it's extreme, like starving or really, really full. But ultimately, we're born with this. And so certainly if I have a peanut allergy, right, peanuts are going to be bad for me, if you will. But aside from that, peanuts are not bad, right? And so we really have to watch what kind of dichotomies we're dividing foods into. And trust me, if you let your kid eat all the Halloween candy, they're not going to want that after day 3 or 5, right? No one wants to just eat chocolate unlimited forever if we don't restrict it. That's the key element here.
Okay, so you mean you let them have it for 3 days and then they will leave it?
I promise you they will not eat it 3 days straight and not want anything else. I promise you, unless it's been so forbidden that they feel like they must get it in because it will be forbidden again.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, Ilona, in terms of, eating disorders are linked so much with body image. Mm-hmm. And so people form body image in terms of not what they think of themselves, but what society thinks of what the ideal body image should be, what the market thinks that the body image should be, and how advertising agencies will try to tell you all the what body image should be. How should an individual look at it? In different cultures, body image is different, and that is one thing. Even in India, we have different regions which will look at body weight very differently. So I want to understand, as an individual, as a global child or children or even adult who are exposed to this whole world, how should they look at body image in terms of the right kind of image, so that they eat the right food, do not think that they have a disorder or anything just because someone or else or somewhere, someplace else or some market is saying. Help us understand these things, especially for children and for parents who get very anxious about these things, not knowing what the children are doing in their daily lives.
Yeah, such an excellent point that you are making, right? If there was one right type of body or body image, how come that it varies between cultures? How come that some cultures honor and celebrate curves and larger bodies, and other cultures or times, right? Even in the US, it has changed over time what we sort of value as, I mean, it's driven oftentimes toward thinness, but the body shape has changed. So isn't that really peculiar and interesting that it can change? And so, with body image, it's always an inside out process. And you're right? There's so much influence from social media in general, diet culture, where we tend to try to evaluate ourselves sort of from outside in. But if there was one thing that I would love to instill for your listeners is go inside out, right? So how do I feel in my own body? My body is my home, if you will. And so, how do you, right? The process is about how do I become comfortable in my body? And when I work with body image, if there are eating issues involved, I will tell you that it is nearly impossible to address body image issues if there is an eating disorder or disordered eating. You have to take care of that first, right? So I always refer to this as a two-pronged process, if you will. You have to eliminate any kind of restrictive eating. And believe me, even with binge eating disorder, and this sounds sort of counterintuitive to a lot of folks, there is some element of restricting. So unless we stabilize eating, where we are fueling regularly, say 3 meals, 2 to 3 snacks a day, and unless we eliminate body checking, it will be hard to eliminate body image issues. So if you want to address your body image, if you're not satisfied, happy with your body and body image, you gotta take care of this first, right? Eliminate body checking. So weighing, checking yourself in a mirror, feeling stomach rolls, and stabilize your eating first. Body image is sort of about something bigger in your life. So if I feel ashamed of myself, of my body, and I have stabilized my eating and I have eliminated body checking, I can now go sort of fish for the bigger story, if you will, to find out where else in my life I feel ashamed. And maybe I've lied to someone, or, who knows, right? So we then address the actual issue at the root of this, as to why I'm not comfortable in my own body. Why am I not comfortable with who I am? Now, this is a very simplified, sort of short little explanation. It's, of course, a lot more complex, but that's sort of the gist of it, right? And listen, I don't teach folks to love their body, because no one does. And quite honestly, I may look in the mirror in the morning and I may feel fine. And then I come home at the end of the day and I see something different. How is that possible? One, I probably are undernourished, both emotionally or physically, and it just tells you how much body image can fluctuate. And so if nothing else, I teach my clients sort of body acceptance, body kindness, no matter what the situation is, right? And some folks, particularly folks living in larger bodies, in some cultures, experience a lot of bias and a lot of hate. So, it's difficult. There are a lot of components to this, but that's sort of what I would enter the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing then comes later on, because of body image, because of the way one perceives itself, or because of the type of setting you are in.
Mm-hmm.
that comes, that creates mental health issues. How do you deal with that? How do I, as a teenager, as an adult, as someone who wants to live a very normal life, as a parent who wants to lead a normal life with their children, how do they deal with mental issues which perhaps are not there, but they are very much there, because you think that there is an issue which is again built by a system which is very much market oriented, perhaps. How do you look at it?
That's right. That's right. So a lot of it comes back down to sort of self-worth in general, right? And one of the things that I teach a lot of my clients is working from your values, right? And so the person that I want to be, and if I say I want to be someone who is honest and kind, and whatever values you identify for yourself, not what the society sort of identifies for you, if you show up that way day in and day out, regardless of barriers, regardless of pressures, if you truly can go to bed at night and say, yes, I have shown up as someone who was kind today, honest, yada, yada, that sort of bulletproofs your self-esteem and your self-worth, right? It becomes unshakable no matter what else is going on around you. At the end of the day, that's the only thing we have control about, right? People will judge us whether I'm thin or in a fat body, a large body. People will judge me whether, whatever. And so we really have no control of what people think about us. So go back to what is important to you and show up as that person day in and day out. Obviously folks deal with a lot of different barriers, like you said, mental health, external pressures, but this is one thing that we can really control.
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of eating disorder, body image issues, mental health, a lot of people nowadays move places. Even in the US, people go from one state to another for work. They settle there. A lot of population from across the world go and settle in the US, either for work or they also become citizens there. And there they come with their own way of looking at eating, in terms of their whole diet system, in terms of their body image, or whatever it is. How do you work out a situation where a normal body is looked at differently in a different setting, and the child will look at himself or herself in a different thing? Second thing I wanted to understand, Ilona, is that why is it that in many of the settings, and correct me if I am wrong here, in many of the settings, especially in school, or you always saw a sort of a hefty child, or somebody who has got a very different sort of a tough character as the one who is bullying? Why it can't be that a simple thin person can be a bully? Why do they then people start thinking that, okay, anyone who has got a tough body or a different sort of a feature might be a perceived bully? Many people are not, only some people. I want to understand all these issues in that backdrop, so that the right sort of setting is there and people look at things from what they are in their life, and not by perception created by either a movie, either a situation, either social media, market, or whoever it is. I want to understand from you.
Yeah, boy, those are wonderful, wonderful, important questions, and there were quite a few of them. So do remind me if I don't answer all of them. But it's interesting. I'm actually European, living in the U.S., and when you look at objectively, if you look at size of American population versus Europeans, there are certainly differences, right? And so we need to, that's very interesting that you say, I'm coming maybe with a solid body image. I honor this. And then I may start questioning it maybe in a different culture because there are different pressures. And so again, right, some of that goes back to the self-worth and the messaging in general, like what makes me worthy. I don't really have to deserve or earn my worth. Right. And so the hope is that the roots are strong and will survive any of these pressures, and sort of, because listen, and this is precisely why folks sometimes are driven to diets, right? Because we believe that maybe if I lose weight, then maybe I will achieve wealth or popularity. But the truth is, when folks monitor their weight on a scale, for example, they might step on a scale and the number is good, so-called good, right? And so for a moment, they might experience a moment of happiness, but then anxiety kicks in. Oh boy, and now I have to maintain it. Or you step on a scale and the number is wrong. So that, so that would sort of yank our emotions back and forth all the time. And so we really need to move away from that. But those influences are very, very strong. So that's easier said than done, right? And in terms of sort of bullying, we project our own stuff. Right. I'm not a Jungian psychoanalyst, but certainly Jung talked plenty about shadow work and how we project our own fears, our own phobias. Right. And so folks who hate on folks in larger bodies or fat folks are often terrified of being fat. And so that can help us understand. And when you talk about bullies in general, right, like folks who bully oftentimes have been bullied, right? So perpetrators often have been perpetrated on. This is I'm sort of not giving a green card or green light for all abuse. I'm not excusing it. But if you want to understand where it's coming from, oftentimes it is from their own background and their own history, which can help us then feel compassion, can help us understand and potentially target it in the right way, right? If we know sort of where it's coming from. But make no mistake, we hate on fat people, we hate on thin people. Like people hate for, whatever reason, right? And so that's where I also go back to values. And that's really the only thing you've got that you can control and how you show up in the world. So I don't know if I'm answering all of your questions because there were a couple of them in there, but do tell me.
No, you have answered it well. In fact, there are no right or wrong about it. It's all about perceptions. As you said, people hate fat people, people hate thin people, people hate normal body. So you don't know what is the right way of looking at things. It perhaps all depends on your values, your culture, the way you look at it. And that is where you draw the line exactly where it suits you. Rather than listening to anyone else, you should decide for yourself. Let the real well-wishers decide for you. With that will be family, friends, and perhaps a doctor or the right kind of specialist who will help you understand about these things in the right backdrop that you come from. So in that backdrop, again, I ask you, is that you are a psychotherapy group practice founder. What is this psychotherapy group practice? Where do people who have these issues in terms of eating disorders, you are a eating disorder specialist. What is it that they come to you for? What problems do they bring? How do you solve them? Who can come to you so that they can seek help from you, who is an expert in what she is doing?
Yeah, so folks can find me actually a couple of different places. So I do own a group psychotherapy practice in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Lotus Consulting, and we treat a broad range of issues. Eating disorders and substance use and addictions are, a couple of my specialties, but we treat anything from, depression, anxiety, all the way to the specialized care of eating disorders and addictions and more. We work with folks obviously in person in the office as well as virtually. In that sense, in terms of psychotherapy, we are tied to the state of Michigan, unfortunately. But I'm certainly always happy to point folks to resources. In terms of the eating disorder work, I also have an actually course and a membership for parents of kids and teens with eating disorders. And that's just at ilonaphillips.com. So that's ILONA. And Phillips is PHILLIPS.com. And that's where I coach and support parents, establishing a recovery path, sort of a roadmap for recovery from eating disorders. And then folks can also join a membership and be supported by folks who have been through this.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.